Northern Germany, late October 1944. Reports from forward air controllers and reconnaissance flights began to coalesce, describing a localized, yet increasingly lethal, concentration of anti-aircraft fire around the industrial town of Merseburg. These were not the scattered, speculative bursts of earlier months. These were precise, sustained engagements capable of downing aircraft with alarming regularity. The stakes were immediate and severe. Continued heavy bomber operations over this vital synthetic fuel production hub would incur unsustainable losses if the nature of this emergent threat remained unaddressed. Initial analyses, compiled by intelligence officers at 8th Air Force Headquarters, suggested a standard array of German 88mm and 105mm batteries, augmented by smaller caliber automatic weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Vance, head of the 3rd Bombardment Division's intelligence section, reviewed the incoming data, noting the unusual consistency in the reported engagement altitudes and the tight clustering of impact zones on returning aircraft. His initial assessment, however, remained within established parameters. A well-defended target, certainly, but not fundamentally different from other heavily fortified industrial complexes. Damage reports from the preceding 2 weeks, meticulously logged by ground crews, indicated an uptick in hits to critical airframe components and engine nacelles rather than the more random peppering seen elsewhere. The metallurgy section at the depot noted an increase in fragments consistent with high explosive, proximity-fused shells. These were not the typical time-fused rounds that burst at a preset altitude, but rather shells designed to detonate when an aircraft entered their lethal radius. A more advanced and deadly technology. A detailed review of gun camera footage, though often obscured by smoke and evasive maneuvers, showed distinct patterns of shell bursts. Unlike the broad, diffuse clouds of shrapnel from conventional flak, these bursts were tighter, more concentrated, and frequently appeared directly in the path of the lead aircraft. The visual evidence, when combined with the precise damage patterns, hinted at a coordinated fire control system, rather than individual gunners operating independently. Production logs from German armaments factories, obtained through resistance networks, had earlier indicated a priority shift towards advanced fuse technologies, specifically the Kugelblitz and Schmetterling proximity fuses. While these reports were initially dismissed as aspirational or limited in deployment, the emerging evidence from Merseburg suggested a more widespread and effective integration than previously assumed. The sheer volume of accurate fire pointed to a significant allocation of these advanced munitions to a single, critical defensive sector. The strategic implication was clear. If the Germans had perfected and deployed these advanced flak systems in numbers, the calculus of daylight precision bombing would fundamentally change. The attrition rates, already high for deep penetration missions, would become prohibitive. The ideological implication for the Luftwaffe was equally significant. A successful defense of critical industrial targets could prolong the war and undermine Allied air superiority. The intelligence reports, compiled into a comprehensive briefing, detailed the observed lethality and recommended immediate operational adjustments. The prevailing sentiment among many flight crews, however, remained one of skepticism, a belief that flak, while dangerous, was largely a matter of luck and evasion. Occupied France, August 1943. The reconnaissance photographs taken just days prior clearly delineated the new German radar installation near Amiens, a spiderweb of antenna and support structures nestled beside a small, unremarkable village. Its operational status, confirmed by intercepted radio chatter, represented a critical threat to Allied bomber streams now probing deeper into Reich territory, necessitating immediate neutralization. The stakes were high. Failure to suppress this site would inevitably lead to increased attrition rates for subsequent missions, eroding both material and morale. The 303rd Bombardment Group, specifically the 359th Bomb Squadron, received the assignment. Their B-17F flying fortresses, each a testament to American industrial might, with its 4 Wright R-1820-97 Cyclone engines, were to lead the strike. Each engine, displacing 1,823 cubic inches, generated 1,200 horsepower at takeoff, propelling the heavily laden bombers to their targets. The aircraft themselves, constructed primarily from aluminum alloys like 24ST, represented a sophisticated balance of strength and weight, designed to withstand significant battle damage and return their crews home. Maintenance logs from the previous week indicated all 12 assigned aircraft had undergone rigorous pre-flight inspections, with particular attention paid to engine performance and defensive armament. Each B-17 carried 10 to 13.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, capable of firing 750 to 850 rounds per minute, a formidable deterrent against attacking fighters. The bomb bay of each fortress was configured to carry 8 1,000-pound general-purpose bombs, the M65, filled with 535 pounds of Composition B high explosive, a potent mixture of RDX and TNT. The mission briefing, held in the pre-dawn hours, underscored the target's strategic importance. Intelligence reports compiled from ultra-decrypts and resistance network observations indicated a moderate concentration of light flak around the objective, primarily 20mm and 37mm guns, with a single, unconfirmed heavy battery. The standard operating procedure for such a threat profile was to maintain altitude and speed, relying on the B-17's inherent ruggedness and defensive firepower. The pilots were advised of the potential for localized resistance, but the overall assessment remained within acceptable parameters for a daylight precision strike. The flight path, meticulously plotted on navigation charts, took the squadron across the English Channel, then southeast over the French countryside, aiming for an initial point northeast of Amiens. The lead navigator, First Lieutenant Thomas "Tom" Miller, meticulously cross-referenced his drift calculations against known landmarks, ensuring the formation remained precisely on course. His instruments, including the Norden bomb sight, an electromechanical marvel of gyroscopes and optics, were calibrated for optimal accuracy, promising a circular error probable of less than 100 feet from 20,000 feet. As the squadron ascended to its cruising altitude of 25,000 feet, the air temperature outside plummeted to a frigid -40 degrees Celsius. The crews, clad in electrically heated flight suits, monitored their oxygen supplies and engine instruments, the rhythmic thrum of the cyclones a constant reassurance. The formation tightened, the bombers flying wingtip to wingtip, a disciplined aerial armada designed to maximize mutual defensive fire. This close-knit arrangement, however, also presented a more concentrated target for ground defenses. The initial flak reports, relayed by earlier reconnaissance flights and ground spotters, indicated sporadic and inaccurate fire from the predicted light anti-aircraft positions. These reports, often based on visual observations of muzzle flashes and shell bursts, were filtered through various command echelons before reaching the squadron leaders. The prevailing sentiment among many bomber crews, hardened by numerous missions, was that light flak, while unnerving, rarely posed a catastrophic threat to a well-flown formation. The sheer volume of incoming reports across the entire theater often led to a desensitization to minor threats. The squadron pressed on, maintaining its steady course and altitude, the pilots confident in their aircraft and their training. The radar installation, now visible as a faint smudge on the horizon, grew steadily larger in their sights. The lead bombardier, Sergeant Robert "Bob" Hayes, began his final adjustments to the Norden, his eyes fixed on the target through the optical lens, preparing for the critical bomb run. The mission was proceeding as planned, with no indication of the unforeseen peril that lay directly ahead. 8th Air Force Headquarters, England, early 1944. The after-action reports from the previous day's deep penetration raid across the Reich were compiled, their pages crisp with the scent of fresh ink and the lingering metallic tang of ordnance. Intelligence officers, their faces etched with the fatigue of long hours, summarized the findings, noting the unusual concentration of accurate heavy flak in Sector Bluebell, a previously considered low-threat area. The flak reports, meticulously cross-referenced with pilot debriefings and photographic reconnaissance, indicated an anomaly. While the overall density of anti-aircraft fire had been within expected parameters for the target zone, a single, exceptionally precise battery had accounted for a disproportionate number of hits and outright losses. Damage reports detailed shell fragments consistent with the German 8.8 cm Flak 36. But the engagement profiles suggested a level of coordination and targeting accuracy that surpassed typical ground defenses. Production logs from Krupp and Rheinmetall Borsig indicated a steady output of the 8.8 cm Flak 36, with approximately 15,000 units manufactured by the end of 1943. These guns, renowned for their dual-purpose anti-aircraft and anti-tank capabilities, were a ubiquitous presence on the Western Front. However, the operational effectiveness observed in Sector Bluebell suggested either a highly skilled crew, an advanced fire control system, or perhaps a combination of both, distinguishing it from the vast majority of similar emplacements. Strategically, the implications were unsettling. If a single, well-positioned, and expertly manned flak battery could inflict such damage, it represented a localized threat that could undermine the perceived invulnerability of the bomber formations. The established doctrine of overwhelming numerical superiority, designed to saturate enemy defenses, seemed momentarily vulnerable to this concentrated, precise application of force. The ideological underpinning of sustained daylight bombing, that attrition could be borne for strategic gain, faced a micro-challenge. The mission objective, the disruption of German industrial capacity, remained paramount. The intelligence summary, while acknowledging the unusual efficacy of the Bluebell battery, concluded with a recommendation for continued adherence to established flight plans. The weight of strategic imperative, the need to maintain the relentless pressure on the German war machine, overshadowed the isolated incident. Occupied France, August 1943. The Squadron, a formation of 12 B-17 flying fortresses, held its altitude of 25,000 feet, the rhythmic thrum of their Wright R-1820 Cyclone engines a steady counterpoint to the vast emptiness of the sky. Their target, a critical locomotive repair facility deep within enemy territory, lay just beyond the next cloud bank, its strategic importance underscored by the intelligence reports detailing increased rail traffic in the region. This mission, designated Operation Thunderbolt, carried the weight of disrupting vital supply lines, a calculated blow against the German war machine. As the lead elements of the formation penetrated the outer perimeter of the target zone, the first bursts of anti-aircraft fire blossomed in the distance, small, dark smudges against the pale blue. These initial explosions were sporadic, isolated events, seemingly without coordination, appearing several thousand feet below and well off to the flanks of the squadron's flight path. The pilots, accustomed to such preliminary greetings, maintained their course and speed, their eyes scanning the horizon for more immediate threats, their training emphasizing the importance of holding formation above all else. Damage reports from previous missions indicated that these early, scattered bursts were often from light-caliber weapons, typically 20mm or 37mm, fired with limited accuracy from mobile platforms or opportunistic ground units. Their maximum effective ceiling rarely reached the B-17's operational altitude, rendering them more of a psychological deterrent than a genuine physical menace. The shrapnel, when it did reach the bombers, usually caused superficial damage to non-critical surfaces, easily repaired upon return to base. The perceived low threat of these initial flak bursts contributed to a collective complacency among the flight crews, reinforced by the statistical analysis of previous engagements. Unit diaries often contained entries noting light, ineffective flak in the early stages of an approach, a pattern that had become almost predictable. This established pattern, however, inadvertently masked the true nature of the defenses that lay ahead, fostering a sense of invulnerability that would prove tragically misplaced. The squadron pressed onward, the scattered puffs of smoke now slightly closer, still below their altitude, but no longer quite as distant. The pilots, their focus narrowed to maintaining their precise position within the formation, continued to disregard the seemingly innocuous explosions. The meticulous adherence to established flight plans, a cornerstone of strategic bombing doctrine, superseded any immediate deviation based on what appeared to be minor, uncoordinated resistance. The lead B-17, the Lucky Lady, its bomb bay doors now sealed, began its turn for the long journey home, a journey it would not complete. At precisely 14:17, a single battery, previously unlisted in intelligence briefings and unobserved by reconnaissance flights, opened fire. Its initial salvo, a tight cluster of 6 rounds, detonated not as a scattered pattern, but as a concentrated burst directly within the formation of the 303rd Bomb Group. Damage reports later confirmed that the first 3 shells struck the Lucky Lady simultaneously, shredding its port wing and igniting the fuel tanks. The subsequent 3 rounds impacted the B-17 flying immediately to its right, Spirit of St. Louis II, severing its tail section and sending the aircraft into an uncontrolled dive. The precision of this initial attack was unprecedented in the sector, defying the typical spread and inaccuracy of German anti-aircraft fire observed to date. Interrogation files from captured German artillerymen, cross-referenced with production logs from Krupp, revealed that this particular battery was equipped with a new generation of 8.8-centimeter Flak 41 guns, coupled with an experimental Wurzburg-Riese radar system. A Flak 41, with its higher muzzle velocity and extended range, represented a significant improvement over the ubiquitous Flak 36, and the radar provided targeting solutions with an order of magnitude greater accuracy than optical tracking alone. The strategic implication of this single battery's performance was immediate and stark. If even a handful of such units could achieve this level of concentrated fire, the established bomber tactics, relying on massed formations to overwhelm defenses, would become suicidal. The previous acceptable loss rates, calculated against dispersed flak, no longer applied, and the psychological impact on aircrews witnessing such focused destruction would be profound. The aircrews of the remaining B-17s, now scattered and attempting evasive maneuvers, witnessed the sudden, violent disintegration of their comrades. The quiet hum of their own engines was punctuated by the distant, chilling thud of subsequent detonations, each one a testament to an unseen, unyielding precision. The lead element of the squadron, 9 P-47 Thunderbolts, entered the designated target area at 14:17. Their formation, a standard finger 4, held tight as they began the shallow dive toward the railway marshalling yards. The pilots, having dismissed the earlier flak warnings as typical overestimations, maintained their course, their attention fixed on the ground targets. Suddenly, a coordinated barrage erupted from the northwest quadrant, not the scattered, probing bursts they had come to expect, but a dense, interlocking pattern of explosions, blossoming precisely at their altitude. Damage reports later confirmed the initial salvo struck 3 aircraft simultaneously within the first 8 seconds. The shells, 88mm high-explosive rounds, detonated with concussive force. These munitions, designed for both anti-aircraft and anti-tank roles, carried a substantial bursting charge of 0.9 kilograms of TNT, generating a lethal radius of shrapnel. The shrapnel, traveling at velocities exceeding 1,000 meters per second, shredded control surfaces and penetrated engine cowlings with devastating efficiency. 1 P-47, call sign Red 2, lost its starboard wing almost entirely to a direct hit. The aircraft spun violently, its engine tearing free from its mounts before it plunged earthward, a plume of black smoke marking its descent. The pilot, Captain Robert Hayes, had no time to radio a distress call. Within 90 seconds of the initial engagement, 4 more Thunderbolts were critically damaged. 2 pilots managed to bail out, their parachutes blossoming against the smoke-filled sky, but the others remained trapped in their spiraling machines. The sheer volume of fire, later estimated from ground observation logs to be 20 rounds per second from the battery, overwhelmed any evasive maneuvers. The remaining 4 aircraft, their formations broken, attempted to scatter. However, the Flak battery, identified in subsequent intelligence analyses as a single, well-concealed unit of 4 8.8 centimeters Flak 36 guns, maintained its relentless accuracy. The guns, equipped with the Commandegerat 40 fire control system, could track targets moving at up to 600 kilometers per hour with remarkable precision. A 5th P-47, already trailing smoke from its engine, took another direct hit to its cockpit. The aircraft disintegrated in a flash of fire and debris, its components scattering across the landscape. The pilots in the following wave, witnessing the catastrophic losses, immediately broke off their attack and radioed frantic warnings. The entire engagement, from the first burst to the last confirmed loss, lasted just under 3 minutes. 9 aircraft had been committed to the attack, 7 were destroyed, and 2 were severely damaged, though their pilots managed to limp back to base. The air was left with the acrid smell of cordite and the distant sound of falling wreckage. The surviving pilots, those few who had managed to disengage from the inferno and limp back to base, carried with them a stark, unvarnished account of what they had encountered. Their debriefings, conducted in hushed tones within the operations room, painted a picture of an anti-aircraft defense unlike any they had previously faced. A defense that transcended mere volume to achieve a terrifying precision. The sheer density of the shell bursts was noted, not as a random curtain of fire, but as a concentrated, almost surgical application of explosive power. Damage reports from the returning aircraft, meticulously logged by ground crews, corroborated these testimonies. One P-47, its fuselage riddled with over 200 distinct shrapnel penetrations, still managed to land, a testament to its robust construction, but also to the sheer volume of metal hurled skyward. Another, missing a significant portion of its left wing, bore evidence of a direct hit, the clean, almost surgical severance indicating a high explosive impact rather than a series of glancing blows. The consistency of the damage patterns across the surviving airframes suggested a coordinated rather than scattered engagement. Interrogation files from captured German flak crews, later analyzed by intelligence officers, revealed the operational doctrine behind such effectiveness. These batteries were often equipped with advanced optical rangefinders and rudimentary but effective electromechanical predictors. The 8.8 centimeter Flak 36, the backbone of German anti-aircraft defenses, possessed a muzzle velocity of 820 meters per second, allowing for a relatively flat trajectory and minimal time of flight to target, reducing the window for evasive maneuvers. The rate of fire, typically 15 to 20 rounds per minute per gun, when multiplied across a 4-gun battery, created a sustained barrage that was difficult to penetrate. The strategic implication of such a localized yet devastating defense was profound. It demonstrated that even a single, well-trained and properly equipped flak battery could, under the right circumstances, achieve disproportionate results against an unprepared air attack. This incident, documented in the tactical summaries, underscored the critical importance of accurate and timely intelligence, especially regarding ground-based threats. The cost of underestimating a single, determined defensive position had been paid in aircraft and lives, a stark lesson etched into the operational memory of the Air Forces. The memory of that day, of the sudden, overwhelming barrage that had consumed their comrades lingered in the quiet determination of the returning pilots. European Theater of Operations, October 1943. The after-action reports from the 381st Bomb Group detailing the loss of 11 B-17s over Schweinfurt initiated a cascade of urgent reassessments within 8th Air Force intelligence. Initial analysis had consistently underestimated the localized threat posed by concentrated, well-directed flak, prioritizing fighter interception as the primary hazard to daylight bombing formations. This incident, however, demonstrated a singular anti-aircraft battery's capacity for catastrophic destruction when its targeting was unhampered and its ammunition supply uninterrupted. The Air Ministry intelligence summaries, previously given secondary weight regarding ground defenses, were now scrutinized with renewed intensity. German flak doctrine, based on the Fliegerbeerkanon anti-aircraft cannon system, emphasized interlocking fields of fire and rapid target acquisition through radar-assisted fire control. The Wurzburg-Reese radar, capable of tracking targets up to 70 kilometers with an accuracy of 25 meters, was a critical component, often paired with the Kommandoggerät 40 analog computer to provide real-time firing solutions. This integrated system, when operated by experienced crews, could achieve a first-round hit probability far exceeding earlier Allied estimates. Production logs from Krupp and Rheinmetall Borsig indicated a steady increase in the deployment of 8.8-centimeter Flak 36 and Flak 41 guns across key industrial targets and urban centers. By late 1943, over 10,000 such heavy anti-aircraft guns were operational within the Reich, a significant portion of which were concentrated in dense, mutually supporting batteries. These guns fired a 9.2-kilogram high-explosive shell with a muzzle velocity of 820 meters per second, reaching an effective ceiling of 10,600 meters, well within the operational altitude of B-17 formations. The sheer volume of fire, rather than individual gun accuracy, was proving to be the more insidious threat, creating a lethal aerial environment. The strategic implication was clear. Previous intelligence protocols, which often discounted flak concentrations unless they involved more than 50 heavy guns, required immediate revision. The Schweinfurt losses demonstrated that even a single, expertly managed battery could inflict disproportionate damage if its position was unanticipated and its fire unsuppressed. This forced a reevaluation of target vulnerability assessments. Shifting focus from generalized area defenses to specific point defenses and their associated radar and fire control assets, the ideological underpinning of the bomber will always get through began to fray under the weight of such concentrated, precise resistance. A quiet reflection settled over the intelligence review boards. The casualty figures, 103 airmen lost in a single engagement to ground fire, necessitated a fundamental rethinking of mission planning and crew briefing procedures. The emphasis shifted from broad-brush threat assessments to granular detail, including specific gun emplacements, known radar sites, and predicted flak trajectories. This incident underscored the critical need for more aggressive photo reconnaissance of target areas immediately preceding missions, and the development of electronic countermeasures to disrupt German radar. Damage reports from the 381st Bomb Group indicated that 78% of the downed aircraft had suffered critical structural damage from direct flak hits, not fighter cannon fire.